This story is a fictional narrative inspired by real-life emotions and everyday experiences. Chapter 1, The Accidental Discovery. Mark never thought that the USB drive his wife asked him to take to her boss would be the thing that changed his life. But what he never expected even more, that he would be the one holding the weapon that could destroy all three of them. Saturday night, my house was weirdly quiet. I was sitting on the couch, TV remote in my hand, but I wasn't really watching. Emma was at a study group and wasn't home yet. Jake was upstairs with his headphones on, probably gaming. Sarah was taking a shower. I reached over to grab the iPad from the coffee table and to read the news. But when the screen lit up, I realized it wasn't my iPad. It was Sarah's. I was about to put it down, but then my eyes caught a line on the screen. "I miss you. See you Monday morning?" An iMessage. Not for me. My hand stopped. I kept reading. "I miss you too. Monday works. Book the usual room, okay?" Room. Book a room. I scrolled up. Message after message popped up. Love notes. Plans to meet. Pictures of Sarah I'd never seen. She was wearing a red dress, smiling, all dressed up in some hotel room. The sender, David. David, my wife's boss. A big-shot real estate businessman. The guy I shook hands with at the company party last year. The one who told me I had a wonderful family. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Sweat ran down my back. My stomach felt like I just swallowed something rotten. I put the iPad down, then I picked it up again, read it again, then put it down. The water in the bathroom stopped. I quickly turned off the screen, put the iPad back exactly where it was, grabbed the TV remote, and started flipping channels. My hands were shaking. Sarah came out, hair wet, wearing her bathrobe. She looked at me and smiled. The smile I used to think was just for me. "I'm so tired," she said. "Next week is going to be crazy. David said the company has a big audit coming up." David. Just hearing his name come out of her mouth made my blood run cold. "Yeah," I said. My voice sounded rough. "I'm tired too." She grabbed the brochure out of the iPad, scrolled through it for a second, then took it upstairs to the bedroom. Before she went up, she looked back. "Are you coming to bed soon?" I nodded, but I knew I wouldn't be able to sleep. That night I lay next to Sarah, my eyes wide open. She was sleeping soundly, breathing evenly, one arm draped over me like always. Her warm breath was on my neck. I stared at the white ceiling, trying to connect the woman lying next to me with those messages I'd read. 20 years. We'd been together for 20 years. Emma was almost 20. I remembered our wedding day, remembered when Sarah gave birth, remembered Sunday mornings with the whole family having breakfast, remembered her saying, "I love you," before turning out the light. I asked myself, did I really love her that much? Tears started running down my face without me even realizing it. I wasn't crying out loud. Just salty tears rolling down my temples, into my ears, wetting my pillow. I just lay there letting them fall, while next to me, the woman who betrayed me slept peacefully. Sunday morning, I got up first. Made coffee, sat looking out at the garden through the kitchen window. The grass needed mowing, the fence needed painting, the usual weekend chores. Sarah came down, wearing one of my old t-shirts, hair all messy. She smiled again. "Why are you up so early?" "Lots to do," I said. She made herself coffee and sat across from me. The morning sun hit her face, and I suddenly realized Sarah was still beautiful. At 45, she still looked young. It hit me. David wasn't in love with her. He just wanted a pretty woman by his side, and Sarah, she wanted someone romantic, someone who said sweet things, someone who wasn't me. "You okay?" Sarah asked. "You look tired." "Didn't sleep well," I answered. "Probably just the work stuff on my mind." She nodded, believing me, just like that. Sunday afternoon, Sarah asked me to drop off a USB drive for David. "Could you drop this by David's office tomorrow morning? He needs it urgently," she said, handing me a tiny black USB drive. "What's on it?" I asked. "Just financial reports. The company's going through some changes, and David needs the numbers." I took it, put it in my pocket. That night, when Sarah went to bed early with a headache, I turned on my computer, plugged in the USB. Password protected, of course. I tried Sarah's birthday. Nothing. Emma and Jake's names. Nothing. I tried our wedding anniversary. Wrong. Finally, I tried a sequence. 12/04/1975. David's birthday, I remembered because back in April, Sarah mentioned her boss's birthday was coming up and she needed to get him a gift. The USB opened. Page after page of Excel files, quarterly financial reports, cash flow statements, contracts, PDFs about real estate projects. I opened a report, looked at the numbers. I'm in construction, not a financial expert, But after working with project budgets for 15 years, I can read a spreadsheet. And I saw something wrong immediately. A category called consulting fees had skyrocketed, $300,000 every quarter. But there were no consulting contracts attached. Short-term investments moved between accounts, then came back labeled revenue from services. I opened Sarah's email, which she'd left logged in on the computer the other day. An email from David. Remember to adjust the Q3 numbers like we discussed. I need the final figures before the 15th. Send them directly to me, not through anyone. Not through anyone. Adjust the numbers. My stomach clenched again, but this time it wasn't from pain, it was something else. A light went off in my head. David wasn't just some guy sleeping with my wife, he was a criminal. And Sarah, she wasn't just his lover, she was the head accountant. She kept the books. She was the one adjusting the numbers. I sat frozen in front of the screen at 11 p.m. In the quiet house, I could hear my own heartbeat. I didn't know if Sarah understood what she was really doing. Maybe she thought she was just prettying up reports for her boss. Maybe she was caught up in something she didn't fully understand. Maybe she loved David so much she'd do anything he asked. But I understood. I understood that I now held the evidence. Proof of financial crimes, proof that could take David down, proof that could make Sarah pay. I pulled out the USB and looked at it under the desk lamp. Tiny, black. Inside it was a weapon of mass destruction. I put it in the safe in my office where I keep the house paperwork and insurance documents. The next morning, I met Sarah in the kitchen. She asked, "Did you drop off the USB for David?" "Yep," I said. "Stopped by this morning before work." She smiled, stood on her toes, and kissed my cheek. "Thanks, honey." I smiled back, a smile I didn't know I could still make. In the days that followed, I started digging. I looked up old news articles about David online. Turns out 5 years ago, he'd been investigated for suspected money laundering through a real estate project in Florida. Not enough evidence, case was dropped. I researched his company, the big recent projects, the partners, the multi-million-dollar contracts with foreign investors. I started looking at Sarah differently. I noticed when she'd take calls in the kitchen, her voice getting quieter when I walked in. I noticed the nights she came home late, cheeks flushed, eyes bright. I noticed when she'd look at her phone and smile to herself. And it didn't hurt anymore. The pain I'd felt that first night had transformed into something else. A coldness, a clear-headedness, a purpose. I told myself I could be sad, but I wasn't going to let them laugh in my face. 3 weeks later, Sarah cried. She sat on the edge of the bed, hands covering her face and shoulders shaking. Emma stood at the door, pale as a ghost. Jake was downstairs. I heard him throw something against the wall. I knew what happened. Emma found the messages on Sarah's iPad. Smart kid, she knew her mom's password, went looking for old photos and found what she shouldn't have. "I'm sorry," Emma said, eyes red. "I didn't mean to. I was just looking for baby pictures. I didn't expect..." I hugged her. She sobbed into my chest. Sarah looked up at me, face wet with tears, lips trembling. "Mark, honey, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I'm so sorry." Jake ran up from downstairs, face red, eyes blazing. He looked at his mom, then at me and yelled, "Dad, don't forgive her. She's terrible." "Jake," I shouted, "stop it." He stared at me, shocked, then ran into his room and slammed the door. I stood there in the hallway, Emma still holding on to me, Sarah on the bed crying. A picture of a broken family. Emma looked up at me. "Dad, what are you going to do?" I looked at her, then at Sarah. She looked at me with eyes full of pleading, fear, guilt. I sighed, a long, heavy sigh. "And I'm going to forgive your mom," I said. My voice sounded tired, like I'd just won a huge battle. "For you kids, for this family." Emma hugged me tighter. Sarah broke down sobbing, repeating, thank you," over and over. I walked over to Sarah, sat down next to her, and wiped her tears. Emma watched us, hope lighting up her face. I hugged Sarah. She buried her face in my chest, arms wrapped tight around my waist. Her tears soaked through my shirt, warm and wet. "I love you," I said. My voice was flat. "I love you too," she sobbed. I patted her back like comforting a child. Emma watched, then slowly came over and wrapped her arms around both of us. The three of us hugged in the bedroom. But when Sarah closed her eyes, when Emma rested her head on my shoulder, I looked down. Through my wife's tear-wet hair into the empty space ahead. My eyes were ice cold. Chapter 2, The Clear-Eyed Husband. Every night when Sarah slept, I was awake. I bought data recovery software online. $39 paid with my personal credit card. The seller didn't know me, I didn't know them. Transaction done in 5 minutes. First night, I installed it on my personal computer. My tiny office under the stairs where I'd always sit at night to pay bills and read the news. Sarah went to bed at 10. She'd been tired lately, headaches, going to sleep early. I knew why. When she was sound asleep, I snuck into her second-floor home office, her desktop computer she used for work. I turned it on. The screen lit up the dark room. My heart pounded, not from fear of getting caught, from excitement. I plugged in the USB, ran the recovery software. Green text scrolled across the screen showing deleted files, old files, hidden files, hundreds, thousands of files. Sarah never deleted emails. She just kept them all, forever. Work emails, personal emails, emails from David. I filtered by his name. 2 years, almost 2 years of messages. I started copying. Every night I did this. From midnight to 2 a.m., sitting in that dark room, lit only by the screen. The computer humming, the hard drive clicking, my heart thumping in my chest. Night 3, I found payroll spreadsheets from 18 months ago. Adjusted numbers, unnamed bonuses, notes saying, per CEO instruction. David Garcia. Night 5, I found an email from David to Sarah. Delete this after reading. Don't leave traces. But Sarah didn't delete. She kept everything. Maybe she didn't think she'd get caught. Maybe she trusted David. Maybe she loved him so much she wasn't thinking clearly. I copied everything onto 3 different USBs, one in the safe, one hidden under a loose floorboard in the garage, one sent to a new email address I created with a fake name. I learned how to clear browser history, turn off password memory, erase my tracks every time I shut down. Stuff I'd never cared about before, now I knew it all. Sarah started noticing I was different. "You've been staying up late lately," she said one Sunday morning when I came down later than usual. Her eyes looked at me with something like suspicion. "New project at work," I said, pouring coffee. "The young engineers are sloppy. I have to double-check every blueprint." She nodded, believing me, just as easily as the first time. I watched her turn back to the sink to do dishes, her round shoulders under that loose t-shirt. I thought, in 20 years, how many times have I lied to her? A few times. Small stuff. Forgetting to buy a birthday present, going out with friends instead of coming home for dinner. And her? She'd been lying to me every day for almost 2 years. And I believed her. Just as easily as she believed me now. I met Laura on a Tuesday afternoon. Laura was an old friend from school, a corporate finance lawyer. We didn't see each other much, but texted occasionally. She'd been divorced for 5 years, lived alone in an apartment downtown. We met at a coffee shop near the courthouse. Busy area, lots of lawyers and offices, nobody paying attention to anyone else. Laura showed up 10 minutes late, carrying a shiny black leather briefcase, wearing a classy gray suit. She sat down, ordered an Americano, and looked at me. "You look like a drowning man," Laura said bluntly. "What's going on?" I told her. Not everything, but enough. I told her about David, about the real estate company, about the weird financial files, about the emails saying, "Adjust the numbers." I didn't mention Sarah. I said, "Someone I know works there. She ended up with these files." Laura listened, expressionless. She drank her coffee, looked out the window, then back at me. "You know what I think?" Laura said. "I think you're hiding something." I didn't answer. "But okay, keep it to yourself," she continued. "I'll just say this. If you really have evidence, take it to the financial investigators. The FBI has a unit that handles money laundering. This isn't a joke." She paused, looking me straight in the eye. "But be sure, these people aren't nice. Get mixed up in financial crimes, they'll do anything. You understand?" I nodded. "One more thing," Laura said, lowering her voice. "This person you know, does she know what she's doing?" I was quiet. "If she's the accountant, if she signed those reports, if she adjusted numbers on orders," Laura said slowly, "then she's in deep. It's not an accident. The law doesn't care about accidents." I swallowed. My throat was dry. "What I'm saying is," Laura looked at me, her eyes both warning and pitying, "are you ready to send your wife to prison?" I flinched. Laura gave a small, sad smile. "I knew it," she said. "It's Sarah, isn't it?" I didn't answer, but my face said it all. Laura sighed. She patted my hand gently. "I can't tell you what to do, Mark. This is your call. But remember, if you play with fire, you'll get burned." I went home, sat in my office, and looked at the 3 USBs in front of me. Sarah could go to prison. Emma and Jake's mom. The woman I once promised to protect forever. I closed my eyes. I thought about the messages, about "I miss you," about "book the usual room," about the nights she came home late, eyes bright, cheeks flushed, lips smiling. I opened my eyes. I didn't want Sarah to go to prison. She was still my kids' mother. My kids needed their mom. But I wanted her to be afraid. I wanted her to know what it felt like to stand at the edge of a cliff. I wanted her to look at me and see a man holding her life in his hands. I wanted her to lose everything, but not her freedom. I wanted her to lose David, lose her illusions, lose the fantasy that she could betray me without paying a price. I put the USBs back in the safe. No, I wouldn't report them yet. I would use them. 2 days later, David called. Unknown number flashed on my screen. I answered. Mark? A man's voice, deep, confident. It's David, Sarah's boss. I was silent for a second. My hand gripped the phone. Hey, David, I said. My voice was calmer than I expected. I wanted to check in, David said. Sarah's been saying work is crazy. I figured you're stressed too. You free for coffee sometime? I'd like to talk about Sarah. About Sarah. He wanted to talk about my wife. Sure, I said. When? This afternoon, 3 p.m., the coffee shop near your office? Okay. I hung up. Stood in the kitchen, looking out at the backyard. Sunlight on the grass. Jake was playing soccer with the neighbor kid. His laugh floated into the house. I smiled, a cold smile. 3 p.m., I sat in the coffee shop near my office, chose a table by the window facing the street. I ordered water, not coffee. My hands were a little shaky, and I didn't want him to see. David arrived right on time. He wore a white button-down with rolled sleeves, black dress pants, a Rolex glinting in the sun. He walked in, looked around, saw me, and smiled warmly. That smile. I knew that smile. It was in the pictures Sarah took of him at company parties. It was in his messages. I smile when I think of you. It was there when he shook my hand at last year's holiday party and said, You have a wonderful family. He walked over, hand extended. I shook it. His hand was warm, dry, firm. Mine was too. Mark, thanks for meeting, David said, sitting across from me. He waved at the waiter, ordered an espresso. I know this is random, but I really wanted to talk. No problem, I said. David looked at me, his eyes appraising. Sarah's worked with me a long time. She's one of my most trusted people. Things have been busy lately. She's under a lot of pressure. I just wanted to ask, is she okay at home? I looked at him. He was asking about Sarah, about my wife, in the voice of a concerned boss. But his eyes looked at me like I was some clueless husband, like I didn't know anything, like I was just in his way. I laughed inside. You think you're playing me? Sarah's fine, I said, just tired from work. David nodded sympathetically. I get it. I'm thinking of giving her a few days off. Maybe she could go somewhere alone, relax. Alone? With you, you mean? That sounds great, I said. She could use a break. His espresso arrived. He took a sip, set it down, and looked at me. Mark, he said, lowering his voice, I know men don't usually talk like this, but I want you to know I really care about Sarah. She's not just a great employee, she's a good friend. I'll always look out for her. I looked at him. He meant it. He actually thought he was doing something good. He actually thought I was an idiot. I believe you, I said. David smiled. He patted the table lightly. Thanks, man. That's all I wanted to say. If you ever need anything, just call. He stood, shook my hand again, and walked out. I watched his figure disappear through the glass door. He walked tall, confident, like he owned the world. I sat there another 10 minutes, finished my water, watched the traffic. I thought about Sarah, about David, about the USBs in my safe, about Laura's words. Are you ready to send your wife to prison? I wasn't ready, but I was ready for something else. I stood, paid, and walked out. The late afternoon sun was golden, heat rising from the sidewalk. I took out my phone and called Sarah. Hey, her voice. Hey, I said. I just met David. He bought me coffee, wanted to talk about you. Silence on the other end. 1 second, 2. What did he say? Sarah's voice was a little shaky. Said he cares about you, said you're tired, said he wants to give you a few days off. More silence. Are you okay? Sarah asked. I'm fine, I said. What's for dinner? She exhaled, relieved. I don't know yet. I'll be late. David gave me work. Okay, I said. Come home safe. I hung up. Standing on the hot, bright sidewalk, I looked up at the clear blue sky. I wasn't the Mark from 2 months ago anymore, and I was someone else. A clear-eyed husband. Chapter 3, The Cards in My Hand. I started with small questions. One night, while Sarah was loading the dishwasher, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop, reading the news. I read out loud on purpose. The Chicago real estate market is crashing. Lots of companies going bankrupt. Sarah said nothing. Her back stiffened slightly, but she kept loading dishes. I wonder if your company is affected, I asked casually. Sarah turned around, forcing a smile. My company's fine. David's really good. I nodded. Yeah, David seems talented. The few times I've met him, he seemed confident, knowledgeable. Sarah stood still, sponge in hand. You've met David a lot? Occasionally, I said, at your company parties. She turned back to the dishes, saying nothing. But she scrubbed the same clean plate for a long time. Those questions were just the beginning. The next week, I asked about the company's new projects. The week after, about how David handled finances. The week after that, about their major partners. Every time I asked, Sarah dodged. I don't really know. David handles that. Why are you so interested in my company? I'd smile. Just curious, we construction guys need to learn from you real estate folks. Sarah would nod, but her eyes were uneasy. I noticed her watching me longer than usual, like she was trying to figure me out. Once I woke up at 3 a.m. to get water. I found Sarah sitting in the dark living room, holding her phone, the screen lighting up her face. When I walked in, she jumped and hid the phone behind her back. Can't sleep? I asked. Yeah, I just couldn't. I didn't ask more. I got my water, drank it, and went back to bed. Lying in the dark, I smiled. She was getting scared. I knew Sarah had talked to David because a few days later he called me. Mark, he said, voice friendly but with an edge, I hear you've been asking Sarah a lot of questions about my company. Sorry if it's a problem, I said. Just curious, we tech guys hear about finance stuff and get interested. David laughed. You're interesting. If you want to learn, why not talk directly? I have some small projects that might need technical advice. You free? My heart beat a little faster. There it was. He was taking the bait. Sure, and I said, I usually golf at Lakewood on weekends. You play? Occasionally, David said. Lakewood? I know it. I'll come by this Saturday. I hung up and sat looking out the window. Jake was watering the plants in the garden. He'd been doing that since he was 10. Sarah always said, let him do it. He likes it. I thought about him, about Emma, about what was coming. I didn't know if I knew what I was doing anymore. I just knew I couldn't stop. Saturday, I got to the golf course early. I bought new clothes, white polo, khakis, brand new white golf shoes. Looking in the mirror that morning, I stared at the stranger there. His eyes were deep set, the corner of his mouth slightly turned up. He smiled, but it wasn't my smile. I checked in at the club, went to the driving range first, hit some balls into the net. My hands were a little shaky, but I controlled it. I focused on my breathing, on the feel of the club in my hand. Around 9 a.m., David showed up. He wore a light blue shirt, white pants, a baseball cap. He looked like he'd just stepped out of a magazine ad. Mark! He waved and smiling. Great, we're in the same group. We shook hands. His were still warm, still firm. Mine were too. 2 others in the group. Peter, a lawyer, and Min, a surgeon, Vietnamese like me. We introduced ourselves and started the round. David was good at golf. He hit long, straight, controlled shots. He joked with Peter and Min about the market, politics, travel. He talked about trips to France, Italy, Switzerland. I listened. I didn't talk much. Occasionally, I'd ask about real estate, investment, the market. At the 9th hole, David and I walked together down the fairway, the other 2 ahead. You know him, Mark, David said, friendly like we were old friends. I've noticed you for a while. Sarah talks about you. Family man, good engineer, smart. Meeting you now, I see she was right. I smiled modestly. I'm just a regular engineer. No, David shook his head. You've got good instincts. Earlier, you asked about project liquidity. That's a smart question. Most tech guys don't think about that stuff. I waited silent. I've got a small project in the suburbs, David continued. Need technical advice, but also someone who understands cash flow, costs. You interested? I'd pay well. I looked at him. He was testing me. He wanted to pull me in. I'll think about it, I said, and my company's pretty busy right now. David patted my shoulder. Take your time. No rush. The main thing is we get along. He smiled, took out his club, and hit a ball straight toward the green. I watched it fly. In my head, a voice whispered, You're in now. No going back. In the weeks after, I met David a few more times. Once at the golf course, once at a bar downtown, once at an Italian restaurant. He invited me and Sarah to dinner. That night, Sarah wore a black dress, did her makeup carefully. She sat between us, looking at me, looking at David, holding her wine glass with slightly shaking hands. David was cheerful, told jokes, poured wine for me and Sarah. He said, I really like you two. Sarah's talented, Mark's talented. You're the perfect couple. Sarah smiled, but her eyes didn't. She looked at me, searching for something. I didn't know what she was looking for. I just smiled back, calm. That night at home, Sarah stayed in the bathroom a long time. When she came out, her eyes were red. Honey, she said softly. Yeah? David, I just want you to know, things aren't what you think. I looked at her. What did she want? To confess? To explain? It's okay, I said. I'm not thinking anything. She looked at me, lips moving silently. Then she turned away, turned off the light, and lay down. I lay beside her, eyes open in the dark. I thought about the numbers, the financial files, David's smile, Sarah's red-rimmed eyes. I was playing a big game. In my hand, the USBs were my ace. One Thursday afternoon, I got a message from David. Mark, something interesting came up. Want to talk this afternoon? Same coffee shop? I got there at 3. David sat at a corner table, 2 espressos in front of him. Sit down, he said, more serious than usual. I need to ask you something. I sat. I've got a big project, David began. Need someone to be the official owner on paper. They won't do much, just sign papers, get a percentage. I thought of you. I looked at him. He was asking me to be his front. The next step. He wanted me deeper. Why me? I asked. David smiled, shrugged. You're trustworthy. Family man, good reputation, not connected to the finance world. Perfect for this. I was quiet, thinking. If I said yes, I'd get deeper access, learn more, gather more evidence. But if I said yes, I'd also be complicit, in the same boat as him. I need a few days to think, I said. David nodded. Sure, take your time, but don't wait too long. Opportunity doesn't knock twice. He stood, shook my hand, and left. I stayed, finishing the bitter espresso. That afternoon, I came home early. I wanted to be alone, to think. But when I walked in, Sarah ran out of the living room, pale as a ghost. Where were you this afternoon? She asked, voice shaking. Met a friend, I said. David, right? And awesome, I looked at her. Her eyes were panicked, lips tight. So what? I asked. Sarah breathed hard. She turned away, then back, grabbing my arm. What are you doing? Why are you meeting him? Why are you golfing with him? He just called me. He said, what did he say? Sarah looked at me, eyes full of tears. He said, your husband is interesting. Why didn't you tell me he was so good with finances? I was silent. Sarah squeezed my arm, her nails dug into my skin. You know, don't you? You know everything, don't you? I looked at her. Her face inches from mine, her eyes begging, afraid, desperate. I didn't answer. Mark, Sarah whispered, tears streaming down her face. Please talk to me. What are you doing? What do you want? Slowly, I removed her hand from my arm. I leaned down, looking straight into her eyes. The eyes that captivated me 20 years ago. The eyes I used to stay awake all night gazing at. The eyes of the woman I once loved more than life. You want to know what I want? I said, my voice strangely calm. I want you to live in fear like I did. I want you to know what betrayal feels like. I want you to watch the man you love crumble at my hands. Sarah's face went white. She stepped back once, twice, her back against the wall. You're crazy, she whispered. I smiled, a small, gentle smile. Maybe, I said, but Sarah, it's time for you to choose. Either you're with me or you're with him and me and you watch him fall. Either way, I win. I turned and walked upstairs. Behind me, Sarah said nothing. Just the sound of choked sobs and her body sliding down the wall. Chapter 4, both sides playing games. David called me on a Tuesday afternoon and asked me to come to his office downtown. I got there at 3. 30-story building, blue glass reflecting the gray sky. The receptionist in her black suit smiled and took me up to the 25th floor. David's office was huge with a view of the whole city. Walnut desk, black leather chair, expensive paintings on the walls. David stood up, shook my hand, pointed to a chair. Have a seat, Mark. Thanks for coming. I sat down. Looking around the room, I thought, how much dirty money bought this place? How many people got hurt? Coffee? David asked. No, thanks. He nodded, sat across from me, hands clasped. I have something to talk to you about, something important. I waited. And I've got a big real estate project coming up, David began. Land outside the city, near the airport. Big piece. Planning to build a commercial complex and apartments. Total investment around $50 million. I whistled. That's big. Big. It is, David smiled. And I need a partner, someone to be the official name on the project. I looked at him. He looked back. I know what you're thinking, David continued. Why me? Let me explain. In business, sometimes you need people who stay behind the scenes. I'm that kind of person. I have lots of projects, lots of connections, but I can't put my name on everything. People would notice. And you want me to be the name? Exactly. You're a construction engineer, good reputation, family man, no ties to the finance world. You're perfect. I stayed quiet, letting him talk. You won't have to do much, David said. Just sign papers, show up to a few meetings. My team handles the real work. You get 10% of the profits. For this project, 10% is about $2.5 million. $2.5 million. I looked out the window. Chicago spread out below, buildings tall and short, roads like tiny threads. My whole life for 20 years had been blueprints, construction sites, mortgages. $2.5 million was more than I could make in a lifetime. I need time to think, I said. David nodded. Of course, but don't take too long. Opportunity doesn't knock twice. He stood, shook my hand again. When our hands touched, a chill ran down my spine. I went home, went to my office, closed the door. I sat looking at the 3 USBs on my desk. $2.5 million. Evidence of David's crimes, Sarah, Emma, Jake. I knew this was a trap. If I said yes, I'd be in the middle of it. If things blew up, I'd be in court right next to David. I'd lose everything. But if I said no, I'd lose my chance to get deeper. I'd only have old financial files, emails from 2 years ago. Enough to hurt David, but not enough to take him down completely. I needed to get inside. I needed to know everything. I picked up the phone and called David. I'm in, I said. David laughed on the other end. Great, meet me tomorrow. Sign the preliminary contract. I hung up and sat there in the dark. Outside the window, the moon was rising, bright and clear. I started preparing. Bought a tiny voice recorder, hid it in my shirt button. Always kept my phone recording when I met David. Every conversation, every meeting, I recorded. I also hired a private investigator. His name was Pete, 50 years old, ex-cop, now working freelance. I met him in a small bar outside the city, paid $5,000 cash up front. I need you to follow this guy, I said, sliding David's photo across the table. David Garcia, real estate businessman. I want to know who he meets, where he goes, what he does. Pete looked at the photo, then at me. Is he dangerous? Maybe. Maybe, I said. Pete nodded, put the photo in his pocket. I'll report weekly. 2 weeks later, Pete called me to meet at the same bar. He slid a brown envelope across the table. David Garcia has connections to some mob guys, Pete said quietly. Here are the photos. He meets regularly with a guy named Victor Moretti. Italian, has a record for extortion and money laundering. They meet at Italian restaurants, nightclubs, sometimes at the marina. I looked at the photos. David and a big bald guy sitting in a restaurant corner, laughing, shaking hands. Another shot, standing next to a white yacht. This is dangerous, Pete said. You mess with these people, you're playing with fire. I nodded, paid him more. Pete took it and left. I sat in the bar looking at the photos under the dim light. My hands shook a little, but not from fear. At home, Sarah started noticing I was different. One night, I came home late after meeting David and his partners. 11 p.m. Sarah sat in the living room, TV on, but her eyes on the door. You're late, she said. Her voice sounded strange. Met with partners, I said, hanging up my coat. Sarah stood up and walked over. She sniffed me. You've been drinking. One glass business thing. What kind of business? With who? I looked at her. Her eyes had something, jealousy, worry, both. Just some people, I said. Why are you worried? Sarah bit her lip. She stared at me for a long time, then turned away. Are you seeing someone else? She asked quietly. I laughed, a dry, cold laugh. That's funny coming from you, I said. You're asking me that? Sarah turned back to me. Her eyes were red. You've changed so much, Mark. You barely talk. You come home late. Strange phone calls. I don't know anymore. I walked over to her and put my hands on her shoulders. Sarah tensed up. Don't worry, and I said, I'm not seeing anyone. I'm just busy with work. She looked at me, searching my eyes for something. I don't know what she found. I went to bed first. Lying there, I heard Sarah downstairs, pacing back and forth, talking on the phone in a low voice. I closed my eyes, but I couldn't sleep. I thought about what Pete said, about Victor Moretti, about the photos, about the spiral I was falling into. I could get killed. My whole family could get hurt. But I couldn't stop. I'd come too far. A week later, David invited me to his house. He lived in a rich suburb, a 2-story mansion with a big yard and an indoor pool. He met me in his first-floor office, even fancier than his work office. The final contract is ready, David said, pushing a thick stack of papers toward me. Look it over, then sign. I picked it up, flipping through pages. Numbers, terms, agreements. The project was called The Oasis. $50 million investment. Expected profit $25 million. I'd be the official owner. But my eyes stopped on an appendix. $20 million transferred from a company called Global Holdings, registered in the Cayman Islands. No information about who owned it. No clear contract. I knew that was dirty money. Everything looked good? David asked. His voice was cheerful, but his eyes watched me closely. Yeah, I said. Looks fine. I signed every page. David handed me a pen, a black Mont Blanc. My hand didn't shake. My signature was steady. When I finished, David smiled and shook my hand. "Congratulations, partner." I smiled back. In my head, a voice whispered, "You just signed your own death warrant." That night, I didn't go straight home. I drove to the marina where Pete said David met Victor. I parked far away, turned off the engine, and watched. White boats lined up, yellow lights reflecting on the water. I waited an hour, 2 hours. Around 11, a black car pulled up. David got out with Victor Moretti. They walked onto the biggest yacht in the marina. Lights came on. I took out my phone and took pictures, zoomed all the way. They were blurry, but you could tell who they were. I sat there another hour until the lights on the yacht went out. When David and Victor left, I started the engine and drove home. Got home at 1 a.m. Sarah was awake. She sat in the kitchen, holding a glass of wine, eyes red. "Where were you?" she asked, voice hoarse. "Work," I said. "What kind of work at 1 a.m? I looked at her. The wine made her cheeks pink, her eyes glossy. She was still beautiful, even now, even after everything. "You're drunk," I said. "Go to bed." Sarah put down her glass and stood up. She walked toward me, close enough that I could smell the wine on her breath. "What are you doing, Mark?" she whispered. "I'm scared. I'm scared of you." I looked at her. Those pleading, frightened eyes. The eyes of the woman who betrayed me, lied to me, made me feel like I was dying inside. "Don't be scared," I said. "I'm just taking care of our family." Sarah looked at me, not believing. But she didn't ask more. She turned and walked upstairs. I watched her disappear around the corner. The next morning, I went to the bank. I opened a safe deposit box, registered in my name. The bank worker took me down to the vault and showed me box number 217. I opened it and put in 3 USBs, a stack of photos of David and Victor, a copy of the Oasis contract, and a sealed envelope that said, "For the FBI, open only if I die." I closed the box, locked it, and took the key. The bank worker smiled. "Your belongings are completely safe here." I nodded. Walking out of the bank into the morning sun, I looked up at the blue sky. In my hands now, I had a weapon. A weapon that could destroy David. A weapon that could also destroy me. But there was no turning back. I got in my car, started it, and drove toward the construction site. A normal workday. Like I was still the Mark from yesterday. The husband, the father, the regular construction engineer. But I knew I wasn't that person anymore. I was someone else, a man setting a trap, a man ready to play the final hand. And I was going to win. Chapter 5, Emma finds out. Emma came home that weekend like always. She went to college 2 hours away and usually came home once a month. Friday afternoon, I heard her old car pull up, the door slam, footsteps running up to the house. "Dad, I'm home." I opened the door. Emma hugged me tight, kissed my cheek. She was almost as tall as me now, long hair, bright eyes. She smiled, but I could see dark circles under her eyes. School stress, probably. "I missed you so much," I said, ruffling her hair. "Where's Mom?" "Working late day." "Jake's upstairs." Emma nodded and carried her bag upstairs. I watched her go, my heart clenching. Emma was 20 now. Junior in college, studying psychology. Smart, sensitive, and she loved this family more than anything. I wondered, if she knew the truth, what would she think? Saturday morning, I was mowing the lawn. Golden sun, light breeze, the smell of fresh-cut grass. Jake helped me rake leaves, occasionally throwing a ball for the neighbor's dog. Everything felt strangely normal. Around 10, I went inside for water. The living room was empty. My office under the stairs, the door was slightly open. I walked closer. Through the crack, I saw Emma sitting at my desk, holding my black notebook. My notebook where I wrote everything down. My heart stopped for a second. Then it started pounding hard. I pushed the door open and walked in. Emma jumped, looked up. Her face was pale, eyes wide, shaking. "Dad," she whispered. I looked at the notebook in her hands. The page was open, my writing clear. And David, money laundering. Phase 1, financial files 2023-2024. Evidence number 2, emails about adjusting numbers. Evidence number 3, the Oasis contract, money from Cayman. Evidence number 4, Victor Moretti, mob, photos at Marina. Emma stared at me, lips trembling. "Dad, what is this?" I was quiet. I pulled out a chair and sat across from her. Emma put the notebook down, hands shaking. "I was just looking for a paperclip. I saw the notebook here. I thought it was your work notebook. I didn't mean to." "I know," and I said, my voice was strangely calm. Emma looked at me, eyes red. "Dad, what are you doing? What is all this?" "David, money laundering? David is Mom's boss. Who's Victor Moretti? Why do you have their pictures?" I sighed. I looked out the window where Jake was still playing in the yard, not knowing anything. Then I looked back at Emma. "I'm going to tell you," I said, "but you have to promise to stay calm." Emma nodded, but her face was white as a ghost. I told her. I told her about the night I saw the messages on the iPad, about the emails I read, about the USB Sarah asked me to deliver, about the financial files, the numbers that told the story, about David, the shady deals, Victor Moretti, the Oasis contract. I told her about Laura, about Pete the investigator, about the safe deposit box at the bank. Emma listened, her face changing by the second. First shock, then fear, then pain. When I got to the part about her mom's affair, tears started falling. Mom really did that?" Emma whispered. "With David for 2 years?" I nodded. Emma covered her face and cried. Sobbing, shoulders shaking, I sat there not comforting her, not saying anything. I knew she needed to cry. After a while, Emma looked up. Her eyes were red, but she looked straight at me. Dad, why didn't you just divorce her?" she asked. "Why do all this? You could divorce her, split assets, keep us. Why turn yourself into... She couldn't finish, but I understood. Into a monster. I looked at my daughter. Her clear, innocent eyes had seen too much. "Because I want justice," I said. "David is a criminal. He's laundering money, committing fraud, and using your mom as a tool. If I just divorced her, he'd keep going. He'd find someone else. He'd hurt more people." Emma shook her head. "But Dad, that's for the police, for the FBI, not for you. The police don't have evidence. They let him go 5 years ago because they didn't have enough. I have evidence. I'm getting more." Emma was quiet, looking at me. After a long time, she asked, "What about Mom? What will happen to her?" I didn't answer right away. I looked out the window. Jake was lying in the grass, watching clouds. "Your mom will have to face consequences," I said. "She signed those fake reports. She adjusted the numbers. She covered up crimes. The law calls that being an accomplice." Emma started crying again, louder this time, more desperately. Dad, how can you do this to Mom? She was wrong, but she's still our mom. She loves us." I stood up and walked over to her. I knelt in front of her, looking straight into her eyes. "Emma, I don't want your mom to go to prison. I just want her to see the consequences. I want her to understand that what she did doesn't just affect her. It affects this whole family. I want her to watch David fall and know that she chose wrong." Emma looked at me. Her eyes were full of tears, but there was something else too. Fear. "Dad," she whispered, "you're becoming someone else. You're not my dad anymore." Her words hit me like a knife in the chest. That afternoon, Emma stayed in her room and didn't come down for dinner. Sarah asked, "Is Emma okay? Is she sick?" I said, "I'm probably tired, school stress." Sarah nodded and didn't ask more. She set the table, called Jake down to eat. Dinner was weirdly quiet. That night, around 10, I heard knocking on Jake's door. I was in the master bedroom, 2 doors down, but the house was quiet, and I could hear Emma say, "Jake, can I come in?" Jake's voice, "Yeah." Silence, then whispering. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but I knew Emma was telling Jake. About 15 minutes later, I heard Jake yell, "What?" I stood up and walked to the hallway. Jake's door was wide open. Emma stood against the wall, pale. Jake stood in the middle of the room, face red, fists clenched. "Jake, calm down," Emma said. "Calm down," Jake shouted. "Mom is terrible. She cheated on Dad with her boss. And Dad, what is Dad doing?" He saw me at the door. His eyes blazed, and he ran over to me. Dad, Mom, tell me the truth. Did Mom really do that? Are you getting revenge on them?" I looked at him. Jake was 15, almost as tall as me, but still a kid. His eyes were full of anger, but also confusion. "Yes," I said, "your mom had an affair, and I'm gathering evidence to take David down." Jake didn't cry. He laughed, a twisted, bitter laugh. "Good, that's good, Dad. Mom deserves it. I hate her." "Jake," Emma yelled, "what are you saying?" "You shut up!" Jake turned to his sister, eyes red. "Don't you see? Mom betrayed Dad. She betrayed our family. She deserves to pay." Emma walked toward her brother, trying to hug him. Jake pushed her away. "Don't touch me. I'm fine. For the first time in my life, Dad is doing something right. He needs to show Mom. Show that David guy." He looked at me, eyes blazing. "Do you need help, Dad? I'll help you. I want to take him down too." I looked at my son. He stood in front of me, chest heaving, fists clenched. In his eyes, I saw excitement, intensity. And I suddenly realized I'd created another monster. Emma looked at Jake, then at me. Her eyes now held more than fear. There was horror, too. "Dad," Emma said, voice shaking. "Do you see Jake is He's changing. Our whole family is changing. Is this what you wanted? I was silent. Jake looked at his sister. You're the one who's changing. You're weak. You don't understand anything. Shut up, Emma screamed. You're just a kid. What do you know about marriage and about family? I know enough to see Mom is terrible. Enough, I shouted. Both of them froze, staring at me. I stood in the hallway, looking at my daughter, my son. Emma's face wet with tears, Jake's face tight with anger. My two kids, the two people I loved most, standing on the edge. I didn't know what to say. I just turned around, went downstairs, and walked out to the backyard. Sitting on the wooden bench, looking at the starry sky, I thought about what Emma said. You're becoming someone else. You're destroying yourself. I knew she was right, but I'd come too far. I'd burned every bridge behind me. Now the only way was forward. Footsteps on the grass. Emma sat down next to me. Dad, she said softly. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to say you were, but I'm so scared. I'm scared of losing you. I'm scared of losing our family. I hugged her. She cried into my chest. I know, I said. I'm sorry. I never wanted you to see any of this. Emma looked up at me. Dad, please think about this. There's another way. You can give the evidence to the police. Let them handle it. You don't have to do everything yourself. I looked at my daughter. She was smart. She was right. But she didn't understand. She couldn't understand what it felt like to be betrayed, to be treated like a fool for 2 years. She couldn't understand that night I lay next to Sarah, tears running backward into my soul. I'll think about it, I said. I promise. Emma looked at me, trying to see if I meant it. Then she nodded and rested her head on my shoulder. We sat there under the stars, father and daughter, not saying anything else. But inside, I knew. I couldn't stop. I'd seen Jake's eyes, his excitement. I'd seen Emma's fear. I'd seen this family breaking apart. And I knew no matter what happened, none of us could ever go back. Chapter 6, David Strikes Back. I noticed it on a Thursday afternoon. A gray Ford parked across the street, about 50 yards from my house. Tinted windows, couldn't see inside. But when I went to get the newspaper at the end of the block, I saw a cigarette glowing inside, ashes falling out through a cracked window. I didn't stop. I bent down, grabbed the paper, went back inside, and closed the door. Then I stood at the living room window, pulled the curtain back just a crack, and watched. The car was still there. An hour later, still there. 2 hours later, when I went out to water the plants, it was gone. But I knew. Tomorrow it would be back, or a different one. I wasn't scared. I'd been waiting for this. 3 days later, my phone rang. David's number. Mark, his voice was still cheerful, friendly. Can we meet? Something important. Sure, I said. When? Tonight 7, I'll text you the address. He hung up. I stood in the kitchen, looking out at the yard. The sun was setting, the sky painted orange and red. Beautiful in a strange way. I went to my office, opened the safe, and took out a small envelope. Inside was a copy of all the evidence I'd put in the bank safe deposit box. I tucked the envelope into my inside jacket pocket. I called Emma. She was still home that weekend. Emma, I have to go out tonight. If I'm not back by 10, open this. I handed her a piece of paper with the bank safe deposit box number and the password to the email I'd used to send evidence to Laura, the lawyer. Emma looked at me, face going pale. Dad, what's going on? Nothing, just being careful. She hugged me tight. Don't go, I'm scared. I patted her back. I'll be back, I promise. I didn't know if I could keep that promise. I met David at an abandoned warehouse near the industrial park. The address he sent surprised me. Not a fancy office, not a restaurant, not a coffee shop. A warehouse? Dark, far from the city. By the time I drove there, it was completely dark. The warehouse sat in an empty lot, surrounded by weeds and randomly parked trucks. My headlights lit up a big metal door. It slowly opened. I drove inside. Lights flickered on, blindingly bright. I turned off the engine and got out. David stood in the middle of the warehouse, holding a cigar. Around him were 4 men. Big guys, stone-faced, hands in their pockets, eyes locked on me like I was prey. I stopped about 30 feet from him. Mark, David said, voice still cheerful. Thanks for coming. I said nothing. David smiled and walked closer. You know, I used to think you were smart. A good engineer, a good husband, a good father. I thought you'd make a great partner. He paused, blowing cigar smoke my way. But I was wrong. You're not smart. You're stupid to mess with me. I looked at him. I'm not messing with you. I'm just gathering evidence to put you in prison. The 4 guys shifted, but David held up his hand. They stayed put. Evidence? Done, David laughed loudly. The sound echoed in the empty warehouse. You think you have evidence? Those old files? Those pictures of me with my friend? That's nothing. I looked at him calmly. You think so? David stopped laughing. He looked at me, eyes narrowing. "I know what you're doing," he said, voice dropping. "I know you hired a detective. I know you met with a lawyer. I know you have a safe deposit box. I know everything." I didn't say anything. My heart beat a little faster, but my face stayed cold. "What do you want?" David asked. "Money? I can give you money. 5 million, 10 million, name your price. Just give me all the evidence and get out of my life." I shook my head. "I don't want your money." David frowned. "Then what do you want? Sarah? You want me to give Sarah back to you? She was never mine. She was just a tool. You can have her back, I don't care." His words stung. Sarah was just a tool. 2 years she'd loved him, betrayed me for him, and he called her a tool. I looked David straight in the eye. "I want you in prison. I want you to pay for what you've done. To me, to Sarah, to everyone you've hurt." David stared at me, then he gave a cold smile. "Who do you think you are?" he said, voice full of contempt. "You're just some nobody engineer. I could kill you any time. Bury you somewhere no one would find you. Your wife and kids would never know." He stepped closer, close enough I could smell the cigar and expensive cologne. "I could kill you right now," he whispered. "Those 4 guys would take care of you in 5 minutes. Done." I looked at him. In his eyes I saw cruelty. The confidence of someone who'd killed before, gotten away with it, thought he was untouchable. I smiled. "Go ahead, kill me," I said softly. "But you know what? I have a safe deposit box. Inside is all the evidence. Financial files, emails, pictures of you with Victor Moretti, the Oasis contract, and a letter to the FBI telling them to open it if I die." David's face changed. "I also have a lawyer," I continued. "She knows everything. If I don't contact her after today, she sends everything to the police." I looked at the 4 men, then back at David. "Kill me. Then see how long you last before the FBI kicks down your door." Silence filled the warehouse. David stared at me, his face a mix of anger, surprise, confusion. He hadn't expected me to be this prepared. "You bastard," he hissed. I said nothing. I just stood there, looking at him. After a long moment, David turned and walked away. He signaled to the 4 men, who backed off and opened a back door. David walked out without another word. I stood still, listening to their cars start up, tires crunching on gravel, then fading away. When it was completely quiet again, I leaned against my car and exhaled. My hands were shaking, my whole body was shaking. Sweat soaked my back. I'd won this round, but I knew the war had just begun. I drove home at 9 p.m. When I walked in, Sarah was sitting in the living room, pale as a ghost. Her hands were shaking, holding her phone. "You're back?" she said, voice strange. "Yeah," I said, hanging up my coat. "What's wrong?" Sarah didn't answer. She looked at me, eyes red. Then her phone rang. She looked at the screen and went even paler. She answered, not saying anything, just listening. Her face changed by the second. Fear, panic, despair. When she hung up, she looked at me, eyes full of tears. "That was David," she whispered. He said I have to teach you a lesson. He said if I don't, he'll She couldn't finish. Tears streamed down her face. I looked at her, the woman I once loved, once trusted, once built my whole life around. Now she stood in front of me, shaking, scared, caught between 2 men. "What does he want you to do?" I asked. Sarah shook her head, not speaking. She just cried. I walked closer to her. I put my hands on her shoulders. Sarah flinched, looking at me with frightened eyes. "Are you going to do what he says?" I asked. Sarah shook her head, then nodded, then shook it again. She didn't know what she wanted anymore. "I don't know," she sobbed. "I'm so scared. He said if I don't do it, he'll kill our whole family. He meant it, Mark. He can do it." I looked at her. For a long moment, I said nothing. Then I leaned down and whispered in her ear. "Choose, Sarah. Stand with him and watch him fall. Or stand with me and then help me take him down, but you have to choose right now." Sarah looked up at me. Her eyes were wide, full of tears, full of fear, full of things she couldn't say. She didn't answer. But in her eyes, I saw the answer. She still couldn't choose. She still loved him. She still feared him. She was still his puppet. I let go of her shoulders, turned, and walked upstairs. Behind me, Sarah collapsed onto the couch, sobbing in the dark. Chapter 7, Sarah Makes Her Choice. Sarah confronted me on a Sunday morning, right after breakfast. Emma and Jake had gone upstairs. Just the 2 of us were left in the kitchen. Sarah put down her coffee cup and looked at me. Her eyes were dark-circled, her hair messy, her lips dry and cracked. She hadn't slept much. "You know everything, don't you?" she said, voice hoarse. "You know about me and David. You've known for a long time." I looked at her. 22 years. 22 years together, loving each other, building a family. And now we sat here like strangers. "I've known for 3 months," I said. Sarah closed her eyes, tears rolling down her face. She didn't ask how I found out. She'd probably guessed. "What game are you playing?" she whispered. "Why didn't you say anything? Why did you stay quiet? Why did you become friends with him, become his partner?" I looked at her. For a long time, I didn't answer. Then I stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the yard. Early sun was golden on the grass. Jake had mowed yesterday. I could still smell it faintly. "You ask what game I'm playing?" I said without turning around. "You're the one who's been playing games with me for 22 years. Sarah started crying. She tried to hold it back, but couldn't. I turned to look at her. My eyes stung, but I didn't cry. I'd cried all my tears that first night. "Do you know," I said softly, "that first night I found out, I lay next to you, watching you sleep, tears soaking my pillow. You slept peacefully, and I couldn't close my eyes." Sarah looked up at me, face wet with tears. "Then the nights after that," I continued, "I sat in front of the computer for hours, digging through every file, copying everything. My heart pounded, but not from fear of getting caught. It pounded because I couldn't believe the person I loved could do this to me." I paused, swallowing. My throat was dry. "Then the days I met David, laughing with him, shaking his hand. Every time I shook his hand, I remembered your messages, the love notes, the plans to meet. And I told myself, stay calm, you have to win. You have..." Sarah covered her face, sobbing. Her shoulders shook. "I'm sorry," she choked out. "I'm sorry. I know I was wrong. I'm so sorry." I looked at her. Part of me wanted to hug her, comfort her like I always had. But the bigger part, the part that had gone cold over 3 months, just stood there and watched. I pulled out a chair and sat across from Sarah. I waited for her crying to slow down. After a while, she looked up, eyes swollen, and met my gaze. "What do you want now?" she asked. I looked straight into her eyes. "You can choose David," I said calmly. "Go back to him, keep being his lover, his accountant. But you'll lose the kids. I won't let you see Emma and Jake anymore. I'll fight for full custody with everything I have." Sarah's eyes went wide, her face white. "Or," I continued, "you can choose to help me. Help me put David in prison. Give me all the information you have. Be a witness. And I'll hire the best lawyer to protect you, to get you immunity. I won't fight for custody. The kids will stay with both of us." Sarah looked at me, lips trembling. She understood what I was saying. She knew this was the final ultimatum. Could I go to prison?" she whispered. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but if you cooperate, if you testify, your chances are better. I'll hire Laura. She's the best financial lawyer I know." Sarah was quiet for a long time. She looked out the window where Jake was playing soccer with the neighbor kid. His laugh floated into the house. "I don't want to lose my kids," she said, voice breaking. "Emma, Jake, they're everything to me." I said nothing. I waited. Sarah turned back to me. Her eyes were red, but there was something steady in them now. "I'll help you," she said. "I'll do whatever it takes to put him in prison. But you have to promise me, don't let the kids hate me. Don't let them think I'm a bad person." I nodded. I promise. In the days that followed, Sarah started giving me information. She knew more than I thought. Not just financial files, but secret meetings, overseas accounts, everyone involved. She told me about Victor Moretti, about David's trips to the Cayman Islands, about how he moved money through shell companies. Every night after Emma and Jake went to bed, we sat in the office, opened the computer, and organized evidence. Sarah showed me the key points, the numbers that mattered, the emails she'd hidden. Sometimes, watching her work carefully, taking notes, I'd suddenly remember. This was the woman I once loved. Still smart, still detail-oriented, still thoughtful. But between us now was a gap that could never be filled. One night, Emma knocked on the office door. She walked in and saw her parents sitting together in front of the computer, papers spread everywhere. "Mom," Emma said gently, "I want to tell you something." Sarah looked up at her daughter. Emma walked over and sat next to her mom. She took Sarah's hand. "Mom, I know you were wrong. I know you hurt Dad, hurt our whole family. But I see you now. You're trying to make it right. I support you. I love you." Sarah hugged Emma tight, sobbing. Mother and daughter held each other in that small office, and I watched, feeling something I couldn't name. Jake stood at the door, not coming in. He watched the scene, face expressionless. Then he turned and walked away. I went into the hallway and caught up with him. "Jake!" He stopped, not turning around. "What's wrong?" I asked. Jake was quiet for a moment, then said, "I don't know what to think anymore. Mom did that to you, to our family. Now she's crying, saying sorry, helping you. Should I forgive her? Should I support her?" I walked closer and put my hand on his shoulder. Jake was 15, but his shoulders were already broad, solid. "You don't have to decide right now," I said. "You can have your own feelings. Nobody can force you to forgive. or not forgive. But look at your mom now. She's trying. Jake turned to look at me. His eyes were red. I hate that David guy, he said. I hate him for destroying our family. I just want him gone. I pulled him into a hug. Jake tensed, then slowly rested his head on my shoulder. Soon, I whispered. Soon, son. 3 weeks later, I called the federal investigators. I went to the FBI office downtown carrying a thick folder of documents, 3 USBs, 4 stacks of photos, a 20-page statement. The investigator took the documents and looked at me with appraising eyes. You know, if this is real, this will be our biggest case of the year. I know, I said, and I have a witness, my wife. She's willing to testify. 2 days later, David was arrested at his office. I watched it on the evening news. David walked out of the building, hands cuffed behind his back, head down. Surrounding him were police, reporters, cameras. They put him in a car. The door slammed shut. Sarah sat next to me on the couch, hands clenched. She said nothing, just watched the screen. Emma and Jake sat at the kitchen table, also watching the TV. No one spoke. When the car carrying David disappeared from the screen, I let out a long breath. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel happy. I just felt tired, completely, utterly tired. Sarah turned to look at me. Her eyes were red, but this time she wasn't crying. Thank you, she said softly. Thank you for giving me a chance. I looked at her. The woman I'd loved, hated, wanted to destroy. Now she sat beside me, trembling, vulnerable, but she'd chosen to stand with me. Don't thank me, I said. We still have a lot to do. The trial, testifying, and life after that. Sarah nodded. She understood. Emma walked over and sat next to her mom. Jake still stood at the table, looking out the window, not turning around. I looked at my family. Broken, but still here. Hurting, but still hoping. Outside, dark clouds gathered, promising rain. I heard thunder in the distance, wind whistling through the window cracks. The war wasn't over, but the biggest battle was won. I reached out and took Sarah's hand. She flinched, then slowly held on. We sat there, together, waiting for the rain. Chapter 8, The Trial. 6 months later, I sat in the last row of the courtroom. The room was big, with high ceilings and white fluorescent lights shining down on everyone's tense faces. The seats for the public were almost full. Reporters, lawyers, curious people. They all came to watch a successful businessman fall apart. David sat at the front, wearing a gray suit, his head slightly down. He looked older after 6 months in jail. More gray hair, dark circles under his sunken eyes. But when he looked up toward me, his eyes still had that same hatred. I didn't look away. I stared right back at him. He couldn't hurt me anymore. He was sitting there, behind invisible bars, and I was sitting here free. The court calls witness Sarah Nguyen. The court clerk's voice rang out, and the whole room went silent. Sarah walked in through a side door. She wore a dark blue suit I'd never seen before. Her hair pulled back neatly, light makeup. She looked professional, but I could see her hands were clenched tight, her knuckles white. She walked past the audience seats without looking at me. She stared straight ahead, toward the judge. When Sarah stood at the witness stand, her eyes met David's. He looked at her, a long, cold stare. I saw Sarah flinch, a tiny shake in her shoulder. But she didn't look down. The federal prosecutor began questioning her. Ms. Nguyen, how long did you work for the defendant, David Garcia? 7 years, Sarah said, her voice soft but clear. During that time, did you know about Mr. Garcia's illegal transactions? Sarah paused for 1 second. The whole room held its breath. Yeah, she said. I knew. The prosecutor kept asking. Sarah kept answering. Her voice got steadier. She talked about the financial reports that were adjusted, the money from the Cayman Islands, the fake companies, the meetings with Victor Moretti. She talked about David telling her to delete emails, hide documents, fake numbers. She talked about nights she couldn't sleep because she was scared, because she knew she was doing wrong but couldn't stop. While Sarah talked, David stared at her without blinking. His eyes were full of hate, contempt, but also something like disappointment. He never thought she'd actually do this. I watched Sarah feeling mixed emotions. This was the woman who betrayed me, who hurt me more than anyone, but here she was, facing the man she used to love, testifying for the truth. She was braver than I thought. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Some days I sat in the back row listening to every word. Some days I was called to testify, talking about what I'd found, the USBs, the pictures I took. When I told the story about the night I found the messages on the iPad, I saw Sarah look down. When I talked about the nights I spent copying data, I saw Emma cry. Jake sat next to Emma, his face frozen, showing nothing. He didn't cry, didn't smile. He just watched the witness stand, watching me, then David, then his mom. The day of the verdict, it poured rain. I sat between Emma and Jake, all of us in dark clothes. Sarah sat in the front row next to Laura, the lawyer. She turned to look at us once and gave a small, weak smile. The judge walked in and everyone stood up. He sat down, put on his glasses, and picked up the verdict. Defendant David Garcia, he began, his voice deep and steady. You are charged with federal money laundering, financial fraud, and conspiracy to commit organized crime. The jury finds you guilty on all counts. David stood up, his face white. The court sentences you to 15 years in prison, plus confiscation of all assets gained from criminal activity. You have the right to appeal within 30 days. The judge's wooden hammer came down with a sharp thump. David turned to look at us. This time his eyes held more than hatred. There was also despair, defeat. He looked at me, at Sarah, at Emma, and Jake. Then the police led him out through a small side door. I exhaled, a long, heavy breath. Emma leaned her head on my shoulder, crying softly. Jake sat still, watching the door where David had disappeared. After the trial, our lives changed. Sarah wasn't charged because she cooperated with the prosecutors. Laura did a great job, but she lost her job at the old company, and when she applied anywhere else, nobody would hire her. Friends pulled away. People who used to be close that didn't dare contact her. The news about the case was all over the papers, and Sarah became the woman in the money laundering scandal. Even though she was a witness, even though she helped put a criminal in prison, people still looked at her with suspicion. One night, I found Sarah sitting alone in the kitchen, looking out at the dark yard. She hadn't turned on any lights, just sat there in the dim moonlight. I walked in and sat across from her. I've lost everything, Sarah said, her voice barely a whisper. My job, my friends, my reputation, everything. I looked at her. In the darkness, her face seemed to have aged 10 years. The lines around her eyes and mouth were deeper, and a few more gray hairs. No, I said, yeah, you still have the kids, and you still have a chance to start over. Sarah looked at me, eyes red. Do you still care about me, after everything I did? I was quiet for a moment. Then I said, I don't know, but I know you're the mother of my children, and they need you. Emma and Jake hugged their mom that night. Jake came first. He walked into the kitchen, saw his mom sitting in the dark, and pulled up a chair next to her. Without saying anything, he just sat there, leaning his head on her shoulder. Sarah hugged him, and the tears started. Emma came in next, saw them, and knelt in front of her mom, taking her hands. Mom, Emma said, her voice choked. You were wrong, but I still love you, and I'm proud of you. You were so brave. Jake looked up at his mom. Me too, Mom. I hate what you did, but I love you. You're my mom. Sarah broke down sobbing. She pulled both kids into her arms and cried like she'd never cried before. Choked sobs, whispered apologies, tight hugs that wouldn't let go. I stood at the kitchen door, watching the three of them. My eyes stung. I turned away and walked out to the yard, giving them space. Standing under the starry sky, I thought about everything that had happened. The sleepless nights, the days full of hate, the times I wanted to destroy everything. Now that it was all over, I didn't feel victorious. I just felt empty. 1 month later, me and Sarah sat in a lawyer's office. Laura looked at us through her glasses. Have you both thought this through? I looked at Sarah. She looked at me. We both nodded. Laura slid a stack of papers toward us. Divorce papers, mutual agreement, assets split 50-50, joint custody, kids live with mom. Dad can visit anytime. Sign here. I picked up the pen and signed my name. My handwriting was steady, calm. This time my hands didn't shake. Sarah signed after me. Her hand shook a little, but she finished. Laura collected the papers and looked at us. It's done! After 30 days, you're officially divorced. Good luck to both of you. We walked out of the lawyer's office and stood in the midday sun. The street was busy with people walking by, nobody knowing we just ended 22 years of marriage. Sarah turned to me. Are you okay? I nodded. Yeah, you? She smiled softly, the sad smile. I'll be okay. I have the kids. I held out my hand. Sarah shook it. A polite, distant handshake like two old acquaintances. Thank you, Mark, she said, for everything. I didn't say anything. I just nodded, turned, and walked toward my car. I moved into my own apartment that weekend. A small place on the west side of the city, 2 bedrooms, a balcony overlooking a park. Not much furniture, just the basics. Bed, dresser, desk, a few photos of Emma and Jake. My first night alone, I sat on the balcony and watched the sunset. The sky changed from yellow to orange to purple, then slowly darkened. Streetlights came on. Windows in the apartment building across the way started glowing. I thought about everything that had happened. The night I found out the truth. The nights I spent copying data. The meeting in that warehouse with David, the trial. Sarah's final smile. I didn't know if I was happy. I didn't know if I regretted anything. I just knew my life had turned to a new page, a blank page, nothing written on it yet. And I'd have to write it myself. Chapter 9, New Life. 1 year after the divorce, my life started to feel normal again. My small apartment had more stuff now. Emma bought me a tea set. Jake gave me a little plant for the balcony. I still worked at the same company, still did blueprints, construction sites, meetings. Life went on, day after day. I had a new girlfriend. Her name was Lynn, also Vietnamese. Worked in HR at another company. We met through a friend, had coffee a few times, then started dating. She was gentle, quiet, didn't ask too much about my past. That was good. But I didn't love her. At least not yet. Maybe I didn't know how to love anymore. Sarah was different. She threw herself into work like it was the only thing keeping her going. She got a job at a small accounting firm, worked from morning till night, even brought work home on weekends. Emma said her mom hardly ever rested, but at least she didn't cry anymore. We rarely saw each other, only when we needed to talk about the kids. Short phone calls, check-in texts, polite, distant, but it didn't hurt anymore. One Saturday afternoon, I picked Jake up to hang out. He was 16 now, a few inches taller than me, his voice deeper. He sat in the car, staring out the window, quiet. I drove to the amusement park he'd loved as a kid. On the way, Jake suddenly asked, "Dad, are you still mad at Mom?" I looked at him for a second, then back at the road. Tough question. "I'm not mad anymore," I said, "just sad." Jake turned to look at me. Sad about what? I thought for a moment. Sad about 22 years. Sad that we can't go back. Sad that our family isn't what it used to be, but not like painful sad, just quite kind of sad. Jake nodded like he understood. I'm sad too, but I think Mom's sadder. She hardly ever laughs. I didn't say anything. I knew Sarah was paying for her mistakes. Every day, every hour. But that was the path she'd chosen. A month later, Emma graduated from college. She called me, "Dad, graduation is next Friday. You're coming, right? I invited Mom too. Can you two sit together?" I paused for a second, then said, "Okay." Emma laughed on the phone. "Thanks, Dad. Love you." I hung up and sat looking out at the balcony. The sun was setting, the sky orange and gold. I suddenly realized I was getting old. More gray hair, deeper wrinkles around my eyes, but my heart felt lighter than before. Friday came. I wore my gray suit and drove to Emma's university. The campus was big, with old red brick buildings, students everywhere in their graduation gowns. I found parking and walked into the main hall. Sarah was already sitting in the third row by the aisle. She wore a light blue dress, her hair up, looking elegant and lonely. I sat down next to her. "Hi," Sarah said, looking at me. "Hi," I said to her. I said. We didn't say anything else, just sat there, waiting for the ceremony to start. When Emma walked onto the stage to get her diploma, my eyes got misty. My little girl was all grown up, tall, beautiful, confident. She held her diploma, smiling brightly toward us. Sarah waved, I waved. Emma saw both of us and smiled even wider. After the ceremony, we went outside to take pictures. Emma stood in the middle, one arm around me, one around Sarah. Jake stood next to us, smiling. A student volunteer offered to take our picture. She looked at us through the camera and said, "Beautiful family. Everyone look here. Smile." We smiled. 4 people, 1 family. Even though we didn't live together anymore, even though we'd been through so much, in that moment, we were still a family. Emma looked at the photo on her phone, eyes glistening. "Thanks, Mom and Dad, for always being there for us. Even though you're not together, we always have both of you." Sarah hugged Emma, crying softly. I reached out and wiped Emma's tears, then patted her shoulder. Jake watched, then suddenly spoke up. "I want to say something." The 3 of us looked at him. Jake took a deep breath. He was 16, but right now he seemed older. "I used to hate Mom," Jake said, his voice a little shaky. "I used to hate her for hurting Dad, for breaking up our family. Some nights I'd lie in bed crying, wondering why she did it." Sarah looked down, tears starting to fall. "But now I get it," Jake continued. "Everyone makes mistakes. Mom was wrong, but she tried to fix it. She stood up in court. She testified. She was willing to lose everything to do the right thing. That takes guts." He walked over to his mom and hugged her. "I love you, Mom, and I'm proud of you." Sarah burst into tears. She held Jake tight, sobbing. Emma hugged them both, the 3 of them holding each other in the middle of the crowded campus. I stood watching, my own eyes wet. I didn't join the hug, but I walked closer and put my hand on Jake's shoulder. He looked at me and smiled. Someone walking by probably thought we were a happy family. They had no idea what we'd been through. But maybe we were happy after all, a different kind of happy after all the pain. The ceremony ended and people slowly left. We stood at the school gate under an old tree. Warm afternoon sun, light breeze. Emma and Jake were talking with friends a little ways away. Me and Sarah stood together, quietly watching our kids. Sarah turned to me. "Thank you." I looked at her. "For what?" "For not destroying me," she said softly. "Back then you could have made things so much worse for me. You could have sent me to prison. Taken everything, gotten full custody, left me with nothing, but you didn't." I looked at her. In 1 year, Sarah had aged a lot. More gray hair, dark circles, deeper wrinkles. But her eyes were brighter now. No more fear or avoidance. "You saved yourself," I said. "I just gave you a chance. You're the one who chose to stand up, tell the truth, face the consequences." Sarah smiled, a sad but relieved smile. "Still, thank you," she said, "for 22 years, for Emma and Jake, for giving me a chance to start over." I nodded. "Thank you, too." We looked at each other, two strangers who used to be married, who used to love, used to hate, and now stood together like old friends. Emma and Jake ran back over. "Mom, Dad, let's take more pictures." We posed again, Emma and Jake in the middle, me and Sarah on either side. Emma held up her phone and snapped. "Perfect," Emma cheered. "Our family!" Jake grinned, throwing an arm around my shoulder. Emma wrapped her arm around Sarah. The four of us stood there in the afternoon sun, smiling. I looked at the photo on Emma's phone. 4 people, 4 smiles. A perfect family picture. Nobody knew what was behind those smiles. But that was okay. What mattered was we still had each other. That night, I went back to my small apartment. Sitting on the balcony, watching the city lights come on, I scrolled through the photos from today. Emma smiling wide, Jake grinning, Sarah with a soft smile, me looking happy. I remembered Jake's question in the car. "Are you still mad at Mom?" I wasn't mad anymore, really, truly not mad. I just had this quiet sadness, like a scar that had healed but still left a mark. It reminded me that I'd loved, I'd hurt, I'd fought, and I'd won. I closed my eyes, feeling the cool night air on my skin. The smell of flowers from the park below drifted up, soft and sweet. New life, not perfect, but okay. I opened my eyes and looked up at the starry sky. And I smiled. Chapter 10, 10 years later. I'm 58 now. My hair is almost completely gray. The few dark strands left are salt and pepper. My back hunches a little, and every morning I have to stretch my neck to work out the stiffness. But my heart's still strong, my hands steady, and I still work at the same company, though I'll retire in 3 years. I remarried. Linda's my wife now. She's 52, an interior designer, gentle and patient. We live in a small house in the suburbs with a vegetable garden and an old dog named Max. Life is calm, peaceful, like a slow-moving river. Sometimes Linda and I visit Sarah. Sarah still lives in the old house. She never remarried, never dated anyone, but she's not lonely. Sarah spends her time volunteering, teaching free accounting classes to single mothers, helping them manage money and find jobs. She has her own group of friends, other volunteers, and they go out for coffee or movies sometimes. When we visit, Linda and Sarah often cook together. They stand in the kitchen, laughing, sharing recipes. I sit in the living room, watching TV, listening to their laughter float in. Emma and Jake say we're the weirdest family they know. But I think that's what family is. It doesn't have to look like everyone else's. Emma got married. Her husband is Kevin, a sweet, kind software engineer. They got married 3 years ago, and last year Emma had a baby girl. Her name is Lily, with chubby cheeks and bright dark eyes, grinning every time she sees me. I'm a grandpa. Sounds funny, but I love it. Every weekend I visit, take her for walks in the park, buy her ice cream. Lily calls me Grandpa Mark in her cute baby voice, and it makes me laugh every time. Sarah visits a lot, too. Emma says, "Mom's the super grandma." Every week she makes porridge, knits sweaters for Lily. Watching Sarah hold Lily sing to her, it warms my heart. Jake went a different direction. He became a lawyer, but not the rich corporate kind. Jake specializes in defending victims of financial crimes. Poor people, elderly folks who lost their savings, families who lost their homes to shady real estate deals. He works for a nonprofit, doesn't make much money, but he loves his work. Once I asked him, "Why did you choose this?" Jake looked at me, his eyes serious. "Because I remember David. I remember what he did to Mom, to our family. I wanted to help people who can't protect themselves." I didn't say anything, just patted his shoulder. One night, Jake came over for dinner. He was quiet the whole meal, eating less than usual. Linda asked, "Jake, you okay?" He nodded, but his eyes were troubled. After dinner, while Linda did the dishes, Jake pulled me out to the balcony. "Dad," he said quietly, "I got a letter today." I looked at him, waiting. "From David," Jake said. "He wrote from prison." My heart skipped. 10 years. 10 years since anyone had mentioned that name. "What did he say?" I asked. Jake pulled a crumpled piece of paper from his pocket and handed it to me. I read it. Scrawled handwriting, faded ink. "Jake, son, I know you don't want me to call you that. I don't deserve to. But I just want you to know I'm proud of you. I read the papers, saw you became a lawyer, saw you defend the weak. I'm so proud. I'm sorry for everything, for what I did to your mom, to your family. I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to know that in prison, I've had a lot of time to think. And I realize I was wrong. I wish you happiness. David." I finished reading and looked at Jake. He stood still, face blank. "What are you going to do?" I asked. Jake was quiet for a moment. Then he took the letter from me, tore it in half, then into quarters, then into pieces. He put the scraps in a small bag, took out a lighter, and burned them. The pieces burned in the ashtray on the balcony, the flame flickering and dying. Ashes floated away in the night wind. "I'm not answering," Jake said. "Let the past rest." I looked at my son. He was 26 now. A man grown steady. He'd found his own path. I put my hand on his shoulder. "You did the right thing." That Christmas, our whole family gathered. Emma's house was bigger than mine, so we celebrated there. A tall Christmas tree all lit up. Presents piled underneath. Lily crawling around, laughing at the boxes. I came with Linda. Sarah came alone, but carrying 2 bags full of presents. Emma and Kevin greeted us at the door. Jake and his girlfriend Jenny, a sweet girl with long hair, helped set the table. We gathered around the big dinner table. Turkey, cranberry sauce, mashed potatoes, pudding. Linda and Sarah sat next to each other, talking about baking. Emma and Kevin fed Lily. Jake and Jenny laughed together. I sat at the head of the table, watching everyone. At some point, Emma put on Christmas music. Familiar songs filled the room, and people started singing along. Linda got the words wrong. Sarah laughed and corrected her. Jake danced with Jenny. Lily clapped her hands, babbling. I sat still, looking around the room at all the people I loved. Linda, my wife, who gave me a new life, peaceful and warm. Sarah, the mother of my children, who made mistakes, who suffered, and who found herself again. Emma, my oldest, now a mother herself, happy with her little family. Jake, my son, grown up, steady, kinder than I ever expected. Lily, my granddaughter, a tiny person representing the future, hope for tomorrow. None of them were perfect. Life wasn't perfect. But they were all real. Real smiles, real laughter, real hugs. That night, after everyone had gone home, I sat alone in my small home office. I opened my journal, the one I'd kept since everything happened. The early pages were full of messy writing, questions, pain, but the later pages were neater, calmer. I picked up my pen and wrote, 10 years ago, I thought revenge was the answer. I wanted David to pay. I wanted Sarah to suffer. I wanted everyone who hurt me to get on their knees. But it turns out living well is the sweetest revenge. David sits in prison, alone, growing old. And me, I'm free. I have a new wife. I have my kids. I have a grandchild. I can go anywhere, do anything. Sarah lost everything, her job, her reputation, her friends. But she found herself. She's not the weak, scared woman she used to be. She's strong, independent, and happy in her own way. My kids grew up knowing how to love and forgive. Emma is kind. Jake has integrity. They're not perfect, but they're good. And that's what matters most. I look back at the road I've traveled, the sleepless nights, the days full of hate, the times I wanted to destroy everything. If I could do it all over, would I do anything differently? Probably not, because all that pain led me here, to today, to this warm room, to the people I love. And that's enough. I closed the journal and set it on the desk. Outside the window, snow began to fall. White flakes, gentle, covering the city in fresh white. Linda knocked and came in. "You're still awake?" I turned and smiled. "About to go to bed." She walked over and looked out the window. "The snow is beautiful." I stood up and hugged her from behind. Linda leaned her head back against my chest. We both watched the snow fall. "What are you thinking?" she asked. I was quiet for a moment and then said, "I'm thinking I'm a lucky man." Linda laughed, turning to look at me. "Lucky because you have me?" I smiled and kissed her forehead. "Lucky because I have everything." Outside, the snow kept falling. Inside, it was warm and peaceful. 10 years, a long journey. But finally, I'd found my place.